Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, it's such a pleasure to be here, and it's such a pleasure to see a full house. I've had a number of calls with people saying, please don't start yet, we're just around the corner, but we are going to start. When they come in, they'll find us well on our way with the program. I would like to start with a confession. Yeah. And I hope that you will allow me to do that. And my confession is that I am not Kathy Malijani. She is our official MC, but she has been called away and is otherwise, she's also on the way. So I've been asked to stand in and just hold the fort for her while she makes her way over here. So that's my first confession. And then my second confession is that I am a newly appointed board member for the Botswana'S Society. We are yet to have the first board where I will be there. Yes, thank you. Can we have a round of applause, please? Hey, back to me. Hey, much appreciated. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be part of the Botswana'S Society, and I'm really eager to contribute with some of the new board members. I think 2 or 3 board members are joining at the same time, and we really look forward to being able to be part of the journey of the Botswana'S Society for the last 60 years or so. So we're really excited about that. But I'm going to ask Mr. Fred Morton to come forward and give us the welcome remarks, and also tell you a little bit more about the Botswana'S Society, especially this program called Isong. Please give a round of applause to Mr. Morton. Couldn't help myself.
Thanks, Bashi. Do me wrong, Bakais. Hey. Thanks, everybody, for dealing with the cold snap to make it here. It's a pleasure to see everybody here. And it is an honor for the Botswana Society to serve as your host. The Society, for those of you who are unfamiliar, and we keep running into people who think the Botswana Society of the Deaf or the something or other. So for those who are unfamiliar, I want to take just a second to explain a few things. The Botswana Society is an NGO. It's been here in the country operating continuously for the last 58 years. I was not present for all those 58, so. But the mandate that initiated this society remains constant throughout, and that is to promote and disseminate knowledge about Botswana throughout all the disciplines, and from archaeology to the sciences to history, political science, literature, and folklore, and so forth. And we've done this over the years in a variety of ways, spreading the knowledge of Botswana, not just in Botswana, but internationally. We have published over 40 books, one of which was launched just a few weeks ago in this very theater, the biography of the late Kwad Masire, which is available for sale by the Botswana Society in our roundtable nearby, or at our offices at the University of Botswana. Or if you want to patronize the corporate world, you can go to Exclusive Books and buy it there. But as well, we publish the annual journal, the Botswana Notes and Records, and have done so continuously for 58 years. And the journal continues, and it is read not just in Botswana. It is available on digital platforms and accessible throughout the world. The readership is global for our journal. We have also been more recently developing cultural heritage tourism products, knowing that fewer people read and yet are still interested in accessing reliable information in the form of tourism products. So we have developed a cultural heritage tourism tour of Habaroni, and I can assure you it's a real eye-opener for those who have even lived here most of their or all of their lives. You're encouraged to find more about this at our office and put together a group to take the tour. We have also been partnering with local institutions, particularly the University of Botswana, the Department of National Monuments and Museum and Monuments, who have made available this nice venue, as well as regional and international organizations, including UNESCO and the Swedish Center for International Democracy. We operate a curio shop nearby, and we tonight, of course, are hosting our latest event in what we call the Isong series. Isong, gathering around the fire to share and enjoy knowledge disseminated and discussed. We have had this series now running for the last 4 years, and this is the 13th Isong presentation. And we have had topics ranging from archaeology, history, women's writers, traditional leather crafts, early films in Southern Africa, Botswana in the digital age, the formation of the Independence Constitution, and the early years of the University College of Botswana. Now, most of these presentations have been offered by academic researchers who have been interested in making available the recent outcomes of their research. Welcome, sir. And at this tonight, our Mohotsi, our leader of the discussion, comes from the corporate world. She has an abundant expertise based on years of experience in the corporate world, and demonstrates that those who have been at the government and corporate mineface, if I could put it that way, are here ready to make it part of their experience, part of the public record. And I should indicate that the media presence here is intended to create a video record of this event, which is being live streamed on the Botswana Society Facebook, and the video recordings will be lodged in the Facebook page of the Botswana Society and a newly launched YouTube series, Isong series on YouTube. But it is fitting, I think, tonight that the late Re Mogae, who served as a society patron and supported the society in many ways, is to be the focus and is being honored for his legacy in one of many ways. And we look forward to our Mohotsi, Sheila Khama, to give us her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is going to be a night of confessions, ladies and gentlemen. I have another confession, which is that I have known Rem Morton here for over 3 decades. And in that time, he has consistently and quite assertively asked me to please call him Fred. And that has just not been possible. So he continues to be Dr. Morton, he continues to be Professor Morton, and he continues to be Rahotai to me as well. So thank you very much, sir. Thank you for that introduction. I think it's been really great for us to get to understand a little bit more about where we've come from and where we're going as a society. What he didn't say directly was that please open your checkbooks and support us, right? So I will say it more directly. We do survive on donors, on funds from the public. So please, if you like what you see, if you think you're looking for a good cause to support, the Botswana Society is one such cause. So I will ask you to go ahead and do that. I also am very pleased to be able to introduce our keynote speaker, our Mohotsi, for tonight. I think we're in for a real treat. It is the first time that we have someone from the corporate world, so we will be looking for anecdotes, for comparisons, for real stories from the ground that I think will make for not just a change to what we're doing, Isong, but also will really provoke a lot of thought and a lot of discussions from the audience here. Okay. Which leads me then to my fourth confession, which is that Sheila Khama is somebody that I have known, again, for maybe more than 2 decades, and in that time she has really been a hero and a role model to myself. I've recently ventured into the mining sector as a core business of mine, and is somebody that I have learned so much from just by following on their podcast. So it's such a pleasure to see you in person and to have you here. My last confession for the evening is that we have an extremely exciting and powerful biography to read to introduce our speaker, for those that don't know who she is, but she has told me, please do not do that. Okay, I have something that I would like you to read because it's shorter, it's more poignant, and is more to the point. If people don't know who I am, then that's on them, right? Those that know who I am, they want not to hear about me, but they want to listen to what I have to say. So I'm going to read from your phone as we agreed, and then I will, thank you, and then we will go from there. You switched it off. All right, that's fine. I will take it from where I am, and then I will read the bio that I have over here. So, our speaker this evening, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Sheila Khama is a non-executive of a number of companies listed on the Financial Times Stock Exchange, the Nasdaq, the Saudi Stock Exchange, and the Australian Securities Exchange, and she has held past and present directorships of public companies that include the Saudi Arabia Water and Energy, ACWA Power, Tullow Oil, the Metals Company, etc., etc. She's also the chairperson of the International Board of the African Medical and Research Foundation, the African NGO, which provides primary health care on the continent. She's formerly a former CEO of De Beers, Botswana, and served as a non-executive director of several De Beers and Anglo-American corporation subsidiaries, including Botswana. She has worked for the World Bank, she's worked for the African Development Bank, and she has advised governments in Africa, parts of Europe, Latin America, and Central Asia. She's an Associate Fellow of the Chatham House, a member of the Rockefeller Foundation, and sits on the advisory board of Columbia University Center on Sustainable Investments and on the expert panel of Columbia's Center on Global Energy Policy. She also hosts a weekly podcast, which I encourage you to go and visit and see and like and follow. It's called Sheila Khama Extractives Podcast, and you can listen in as she comments on her own or talks with guests around how do we tackle many of the subjects that are impacting mining, that are impacting energy and sustainability across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our guest speaker. Thank you very much. Here's the microphone.
Is this one?
Yes, that one. All right.
Okay. So every time I'm introduced, I can't recognize myself. Today was no exception. Look, as I stand here, I'm reminded of something our former head of state, Seiki Dumile, said, which is that in life we're either brave or foolish. Here today, I think I'm both. Either way, I want to thank the Botswana Society for the opportunity to be here to talk about a subject matter which quite rightly is very topical, but also very important to all of us in our country. More importantly, I want to thank all of you. I'm flattered that you think I'm worth your time. Hopefully when we are done, I will not have proved you wrong. On the subject itself, I want to make a couple of disclaimers. I'm not a researcher. I'm speaking to you as a practitioner. And so those who are versed in the world of research and analytics, to be upfront, you'll be disappointed. But I hope that when I'm done, I'll have put enough subject matter in the room that researchers, academia, and scholars will have a few more strengths to pursue in their world of research. So that's my first disclaimer. The second disclaimer is this, that I'm not here to speak about Mogae's entire life in mining. I'm actually here to speak very specifically about his life as a politician and not as a technocrat, because he spent a lot more time as a technocrat, albeit in the mining space. So I want to be absolutely clear, I'm sticking to that lane. I want to also say that as I compliment, question, maybe even critique some of his actions, I do so in the understanding that he was a leader working through others, that when I give him credit, I'm giving credit to the entire ecosystem of which he was a leader. I also want to say emphatically, he stood on the shoulders of those who came before him. And that as I speak, by definition, I'm complimenting those two. And that it is for sheer discipline and purpose of sticking to the topic today that I may not refer to others. And the absence of reference is not the absence of regard for those people. Just to be absolutely clear in what I will say. I want to also say that part of my foolishness in being here stems from the fact that many of the issues I will talk about are frankly complex. But complexity is no excuse for us not to talk. So I warn you, when you come here, you won't have achieved 101 diamond industry, you won't. But you will have learned enough, you can go and investigate. So take what I say with a pinch of salt, because it's embedded in a lot of context, the nature of which I'm not able to bring here. So please, if you're a reporter, don't report what I say. Take what I say to go and do research so you can report. If you report only what I say, you are scratching the surface. So there we go. So having now made those disclaimers, let me give you a sense of how I'm approaching this. I have bucketed the conversation in essentially 3 areas. The one is a historic context, because history matters. The second one is also the context of what was the world like during Mogae's time, because it is that informed the issues he had to deal with and why they became important. And then I deal with 4 areas specifically that I think define his vice presidency, but largely presidency, in the mining industry. So that's what you can expect. So let me get started. So if we think about why we're here because we, the people, own the diamonds. But it's not self-evident that we should own the diamonds, nor did we always own the diamonds. So how did we own the diamonds? It turns out that it started in the 1950s with the late Vanuatu regent, Sheila Khama. His father, Khama III, had given an exploration license to the British South Africa Company. In his wisdom, when Sheila Khama assumed the regency, he said, hell no, I am not extending this exploration license until the British government changes and vests minerals in the chiefs the same way that land in the tribal territories is vested in the chiefs. That was his first objection. The second objection was that he was weary that unless the chiefs had a say in how minerals would be exploited in Bechuanaland, that the people of Bechuanaland would suffer the same wrath that black people in the mining industry in South Africa suffered. And he wanted a new dispensation, which is why he wouldn't extend the license. And so there was a back and forth between himself, Cape Town, London, and then he won the battle. The minerals were vested in the chiefs, and subsequently his nephew, Sheila Khama, became the head of state, and he in 1967 then said to the chiefs, we are no longer a disaggregated set of ethnic communities. We are now a single sovereign state. Can you vest all your rights in the state such that from now on the minerals belong not to you, the chiefs, but the new republic? And so the chief said yes. I did ask Saiki Tumile, said, why do you think the chief so readily said this? He said, ha, 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 he said, because Sheila Khama was the only one with the minerals, and the other chiefs thought they might get to share. So why would they say no? That was Saiki Tumile's take on that. It was that granted us the rights as citizens and the ownership, and the state, the custodian. And I use the word state decidedly. I don't mean the government of the day. I mean the state. The government of the day is a mere agent of the state. But the parliament of that time, in 1967, went further. They enacted a law called the Mines and Minerals Act. And one of the most consequential provisions of that act was that even when the state would license any mining company to develop a mineral resource, the state would have a right to equity shareholding to the tune then of 15%. It is this which again made us, we the people, have a share in the Botswana. Had it not been those sequence of steps, by definition, Orapa would belong to the Vanuatu. They'd be damn rich. But even richer would be those in Janem, because no mine of any category in the world is as rich as Janem in terms of profit. So there you are. That's how we got here. Now then, if we then think about the next phase, DBS came in 1956, made a discovery of Orapa. Botswana was established as a joint venture at 25%, and Janem was discovered later on, and the shareholding increased to 50%. So this is what Mogae inherited. It was this dispensation that rendered him our trustee-in-chief. But Mogae didn't just inherit this legal dispensation. He also inherited a world in which, by then, both the government of Botswana and DBS were center staged in the world of diamond mining. So center stage was both DBS and the government of Botswana that at that time, DBS's market footprint globally was something in the order of 85%. Botswana already accounted for in the order of 22% by value of production. In revenue terms, we're already getting about 50% of all public revenue, 85% of foreign earnings, 33% of GDP. Put another way, without revenue from diamonds, our country was quite simply a basket case. And a huge part of what Mogae and others had to do was capitalize on this and make sure that they would steer our economy in a way that this value would become manifest. But there was something else. Demand for diamonds, jewelry, had grown significantly, and not just in terms of the diamonds themselves, but also relative to other gemstones like sapphire and emeralds. It was estimated, for instance, by 2002, that demand for diamond jewelry had increased by 46% and price by 26%, wherein that of emeralds had dropped by up to 26%. The answer? De Beers' advertising campaign, A Diamond's Forever. Don't let anyone fool you. They don't sell themselves. Don't let anyone fool you. They don't sell themselves. And here is the proof. Mogae then describes this relationship in which we were dependent on revenue. De Beers benefited from up to 60% of their entire supply came from the Botswana mines, and 50% of their revenue from rough diamonds also came from Botswana. It is this that Mogae called Siamese twins, because it was this mutually beneficial dependency that he recognized. Now, that's the good part. The world was changing. When in 1967 the minerals were discovered, we were at school, we danced, we were told to dance because our country was now rich. We were very grateful, we were full of praise worthy for De Beers. But come the 80s, we were beginning to think, these guys are taking us for a ride, you would hear, increasingly. But to be fair, Botswana was not alone, the world was changing. The level of mistrust in corporations and governments was increasing. And Botswana and De Beers were not exempt. And the restlessness you were seeing in the public discourse was not unique to our country, nor that industry for that matter. But that was the card that was dealt the leaders of that time. True, we had matured and become the center of diamond mining. But if you travel the world in the 80s and said I was from Botswana, they said, but what? If you show them a map, they looked and then looked the other way, and they said, we thought diamonds came from Kimberley. There again, if you were promoting Botswana, that was your headwind. And those were some of the challenges that Mogae and those of his time faced. So based on that, then, I identified 4 items that I want to talk about that speaks to how, through his leadership, Botswana navigated this new world of newfound wealth and fame, albeit invisibly famous, how he navigated the partnership in which Botswana had risen from a position of being, if you wish, the underdog, to being in a position in which De Beers depended to a large extent for the market footprint on his relationship with Botswana. This coming of age needed managing. It doesn't manage itself. So let me start then with the partnerships. Here, let me define the partnerships. By the time Mogae came to be in politics, there were 2 partnerships. There was the partnership that we all know about, which is Botswana. But there was also the partnership that had been created in 1987, in which, through first Botswana itself and ultimately ourselves as a nation state, we took shares in De Beers Group. The 15% we have today was first acquired in 1987 through Botswana, because that followed a market slump in which Botswana stockpiled and De Beers exercised the right not to buy based on the principle of force majeure. When the market recovered, Harry Oppenheimer then said, we have not sold for years. We have no cash to buy. We will give you stock in exchange. A negotiation and evaluation took place. Voila, suddenly we own De Beers. This is this is the partnership I'm specifically, the 2 partnerships I'm specifically speaking about. So let's start with Botswana. What did Mogae do? Mogae did a couple of things. When De Beers made the discovery that Botswana was established, a management contract had been entered into between Botswana and Anglo-American. This is where a bit of complexity, he's my brother. Every time I speak, he walks out of the room. So there you are, family squabble. But seriously, what the point I was making is that Anglo-American were contracted to manage the commercial affairs of Botswana, which is to say finance, people, procurement, internal audit, the schools, the hospitals, facilities management, etc., etc. They manage that for a fee. Ramasire and Re Mogae figured that enough was enough, that Botswana had reached sufficient maturity and capacity to end that contract. And with that, did two things. One, acknowledged that after 30 years or so, actually, the management, the trading of people was successful, because that is the only way you then take it. So in a way, while it might have deprived Anglo-American of revenue, actually it was a compliment, because if they had failed, there would not have been anyone to take over after them. So let's just be clear about that. There was also objection that perhaps the margin was too high. But the real reason was that we have come of age, we are a company that can now self-manage. That was important, an acknowledgement that we can now move on, which is why, for the first time, Botswana had a managing director who was not nominated by the company that had the managing contract, but was nominated by the two shareholders, and that was the late Re Baletsi. His predecessor, Re Chindo, was an employee of Anglo-American. He was working for the company that had been engaged to manage the contract and was nominated like all other executives of Anglo-American. We must make that distinction. The second thing that Re Mogae did in terms of the partnership was that the chairmanship of Botswana was held by DBS. Now I'm saying DBS, not Anglo. I'm saying DBS. Re Mogae changed that in 2006, again through the technocrats and all the other people around him, and said, our company has come of age, we are now going to rotate. To this day, the chairmanship of Botswana is held by the one partner for 2 years, and then it moves. Now let's not get ahead of ourselves here, because the chairmanship of Botswana is purely ceremonial. They have no voting power at all. They just say, hello, secretary, is everyone here? Can I convene the meeting? The meeting is closed. But they yield no power, if you look at it purely from those terms. Re Mogae also did one thing. The revenue split out of Botswana at the time of his presidency was 75 cents to every dollar of revenue. In 2006, following the joining lease renewal and the sales agreement, that ratio moved from 75 cents to every dollar to 81 cents to every dollar. To be absolutely clear, this is a statement not of Botswana's generosity or negotiation. It's just, as Medler will tell you, these mines are unique in their wealth and their profitability. The cost to production ratio is one of the lowest in the world. Now, here is a warning to the young generation. My love, it won't be like this forever. The resource will diminish, and that ratio will be changed. And when it changes, let's not say they are cheating us. Mines are by nature finite, and therefore the stock will drop. That ratio will need adjusting, just to help those who might get a little excited and say they've left money on the table. They are not leaving money on the table. The economics of the minerals will simply be diminishing. Nevertheless, Re Mogae did help us. Re Mogae also, in the partnership space, was the one who increased. He did two things. One, the stock in De Beers Group used to be held by Botswana. Through negotiations, it passed on to Botswana alone. And then it stood at 11%, and now it stands at 15%. All within a space of 5 years. Mogae and the Minerals Policy Committee of the Botswana government managed to increase our leverage. This is important because it means we get an additional significant source of revenue coming from profits from DBS and dividends, among others. So my sense is that having taken on from Re Sekitumile, these qualify for achievements, but I'm quite happy to argue. The second thing I want to look at is impact on consumer markets. Take your mind back to my opening statement, which is to say, the world was very distrusting. Civil societies were up in arms. And you were telling them to buy this object for sheer luxury. What are you, a clown? We have an environment to save. Why would we dig up stones, global warming, and all those things, just so women in Hollywood would adorn themselves? Botswana's biggest challenge was to counter this argument. And if you think that Mogae had been a junior economist, the head of macroeconomic planning, the permanent secretary of finance, a negotiator in the original joining lease, a non-executive director representing the government in Botswana, the governor of the Reserve Bank, the Minister of Finance. Can you think of anyone more qualified to stand before the world and say, in our country, we use revenue responsibly? Can you think of how lucky we were? There was a man who could say, without needing, no offense intended, Jeff, I know you are a speechwriter, without saying, Jeff, what should I say? He would say, Jeff, this is what I'm going to say. And when he stood and people looked at his bio, who could but doubt him? But that, as if that was not enough, he would also say, when I started, our GDP was 10,000 rands. Now, per capita, we are the highest on the continent. Who could argue with that? And he would say the gap between this and here is diamond revenue and good governance. And he could verify that. And so there were two things specifically that challenged. The war in Angola, the civil war. The war in Liberia, and the civil war in Sierra Leone. Combine children with their arms cut off, mothers with no breast to feed children, boys brandishing guns with no prospects for a future. You've got a good picture to put against a woman in Hollywood adorned with diamonds, and you want to say, are you sure you want to buy this so this child can look like this? People are walking away. And it was our job to make the argument that no, this is only 4% of the entire diamond jewelry production. We, on the other hand, in Southern Africa, account for 60%. And then they would say, yeah, you would say, look at you, they'd say to me, all dolled up, nails polished. You are bored, we can tell. They sent you here, put lipstick on you, get out of here. Because I was not barefoot and pregnant. My legitimacy as an African woman was seen through poverty. And if I wasn't poor, I wasn't real. This is the tragedy of the world. It's just like that. And so you needed to really find ways. And here, thanks to DBS's knowledge of reputation management, marketing, Ren Chindo's powers of persuasion, as the then MD of Botswana, that Botswana has everything to lose. We must put everything behind this to make sure we find the right people in the United States to put a campaign together to counter this narrative. But it wasn't just the narrative. By then, the UN had put the matter in the General Assembly, arguing that diamonds must be banned on grounds that they were responsible for human rights atrocities en masse. And so Mogae took the stand and made a case. But that was the easy part, because, you know, the UN, they make conventions, but they comply voluntarily. They are not a legislative body with powers of jurisdiction over anybody. And so they are valuable because they lend credibility to arguments on sovereign matters, but actually they don't have the power to implement if members choose to renege. Even worse, a congressman from the United States state of Ohio, known as Congressman Hall, gathered a team of both Democrats and Republicans and say, I have been in touch with NGOs. They tell me that diamonds are used to fund terrorism. Diamonds are used to fund human rights atrocities. We must pass a law which was based on a bill he drafted called the Conflict Diamond Bill. Now, this was the diamond industry's worst nightmare for two reasons. One, by then the United States was the world's largest consumer of diamond jewelry at 54%. If they banned diamonds, we would potentially lose up to that. But even worse, Uncle Sam is a trendsetter. The reason our children are going around with their backsides and their pants falling is because somebody across the pond said it's cool. Isn't that so? Hmm? The reason our young ladies going around with their belly buttons sticking out is, again, Hollywood said this is cool. So you offend Uncle Sam to your own peril, because that which Uncle Sam says is trendy. Therefore, if the United States walked away from diamonds very quickly, going eastwards from the Gulf to India to Japan, the world will cease to see this. So the United States was not just important in the moment, it was important in the future of the industry and the trajectory. You wanted to make sure Congressman Hall did not succeed. And there again, Lephistonomics was in the room. He went and addressed several committees of Congress, the Ways and Means Committee, the Black Congressional Committee, the Foreign Relations Committee for Africa, under the chairmanship of a man called Feingold. They were so convinced, Feingold said, look, enough is enough. We have had. We are going to withdraw this bill called the Conflict Diamond Bill. Instead, because we do not want to do harm to countries like Botswana, we will pass a new bill called the Clean Diamond Trade Act. I want you to let that sink, because in that moment, our president had not just saved our country, he had saved the diamond industry. You want to take pride in that. You want to take pride in that. He will be one of only a few presidents ever, not just in Africa, anywhere in the world, to travel to the United States, and based on his motivation together with others, lead to a legislation being passed by the American lawmakers, not for America, but for something else way, because the United States has no mining industry. This was just about us. They had no mining industry, no lobbyists who would have lost anything. They have not had a mine. I think there was a teeny weeny mine. It produces, 0.3 carats once a year, this and the other. So you could dump the diamond industry and nobody would be affected in the United States. So it was all about us. And that, in my humble opinion, was one of his greatest achievements. The quid pro quo was that both the industry and the governments that produce would create a system of warranties to prove provenance, such that none of the diamonds that were coming from the conflict areas would be found in the United States pipeline. The dispensation was not called Botswana process because nobody could pronounce Botswana, but by God, they knew Kimberley. That head of Kimberley. Kimberley is the place where the diamonds come from. And so, magnanimously, the countries agreed, yes, call it the Kimberley process. It will be more recognizable. A statement of pragmatism. And understanding that you win not because you get the headlines, you win because you get the substance of what you were arguing with, which is that we want access to Uncle Sam's markets. We don't want to be branded. We just want our children to continue to sell diamonds. And so our president said, by all means, we can live with this. You want to, just for a moment, think, what sort of person does that? I want to tell you a little something here, because we've spoken about the conflict minerals. What I haven't spoken about is Blood Diamond movie, because that was the other wind that he was facing. I won't go into a lot of details. I just want to make a very fine distinction. The American law was a trade law allowing us to trade with the United States. That was a law, a regulator. If you think about the Black Diamond, that was more about consumer confidence, which is to say, the ability of people, rich people in the United States, to wake up, get in their cars and go to Fifth Avenue and buy a ring for $10,000 or $100,000 US, in the belief that a portion of that is helping a child somewhere in Africa. Don't ask me how and why. We just know this in market research, that there is such a thing as guilt money. Nobody wants to think they are enjoying life at the expense of another. And so consumers of luxury commodities need to attach their indulgence to a sense of goodness. We were the sense of goodness. Because when I would say to people in the United States, hold it, Joe, you know, this was Sierra Leone, we are over here. No offense, my brother. They would say, but how do we know you are not just saying this? I would say to them, well, in my country, all the children go to school in the state pace. If they do well up to a certain grade at high school, they also get paid for at university. That all women receive prenatal and postnatal care. Now, will challenge me on the issue of all women. We'll get to that. But the reason I would use these statistics was very deliberate. Nothing petrifies young people in the United States than the prospects that they go to college and they have to get a loan and be indebted forever. So they could relate and say, what? They do this in your country? Nothing petrifies families in North America and Europe than what they call health care. It's a big deal. For most people, this is their worst nightmare. So if you juxtaposed the life we were living here to that which they were living, it made them stand and think, maybe we should continue to buy these diamonds. Maybe there is something good here. But that is the difference between a law that governs trade and the sentiment of a luxury commodity market. And when people say to you, diamonds sell themselves, remember this picture to the left. It's to your left and to my right. What we are doing here is comparing the luxury items that women indulge in. And the two most common are diamonds and then high-end holidays like the Okavango Delta. Somewhere sandwiched in between is gold, but gold is a poor cousin of the group, just to say it. And if you look at India, the reason it is there is traditional. In India, they give young people coming of age, christening, weddings. Gold is not so much a luxury commodity, it's a cultural statement. And so naturally, you will see that. Why is this image important? It's important because actually we as a country sit at the intersection of two primary luxury commodities, high-end tourism and diamonds. You want to be absolutely clear. You do nothing here to offend public sentiment, because otherwise your two major revenue earners will be endangered. Re Mogae understood this. Even as he was speaking directly to the issue of diamonds, he understood this big picture. The third issue of Re Mogae's contribution is in the midstream. And here the operative word is the sales agreement of 2006. So when we do business with Botswana and DBS, there are several agreements. There is the JV agreement, which sets the company. And then there is the sales agreement, which says who sells for what. And then there's a suite of others. And then there is the mining lease, which is just the regulator giving the license not to DBS, as some might say, but to Botswana. But that's pretty straightforward. The most consequential one on an ongoing basis is the sales agreement in which DBS were selling. Why is it consequential? It sits at the heart of DBS's marketing, but also business model since 1926, when Sir Ernest Oppenheimer created the Central Selling Organization. The principle is this, that you create a single channel through which you sell diamonds, and with that, you can moderate supply and demand. And by doing that, you can pretty much level off the price so that it doesn't ever go two-way down or two-way up, because either one of them is not sustainable, much less desirable. That is in the absence of a total global economic collapse. This was the principle. By 2006, Parliament after another had said, look, these DBS people, what are they doing selling our diamonds? We want to sell our diamonds. Issue one. The second issue was, in God's name, why, if we are the world's largest producer of diamonds, do we only have less than 1,000 jobs, and India has a whopping 1 million at that time, cutting and polishing? Now, don't get excited. There are reasons for these sort of things. I know that this statistic is stark, and I won't deal with it now. We'll deal with it at the questions. Let me just lay the picture, because that was the argument. And so, under the leadership of Re Mogae, Cabinet gave the negotiator a mandate. We want to beneficiate diamonds here in our country. And it was through this that the sales agreement of 2006 was changed in two material ways. One, for the first time, while selling through DBS, an agreement was reached in which a portion of DBS's goods would come to Botswana specifically to feed factories here, so that they wouldn't be subject to having to compete with others from elsewhere. That was important. The second thing was that, having carried out a study, as the government of Botswana, through Bedia at the time, Masqua will know, and established that actually, on a purely commercial basis, Botswana was not competitive as a destination for cutting and polishing. And that was why India was winning the fight. We were not competitive because, one, our utilities were very high. Two, ease of doing business. Ease of what? There is no such thing here. And three, the cost of labor from a productivity perspective was nowhere. I think we estimated at the time that where India would produce a T-shirt at a cost of $5 US, we would produce that at a whopping 50. Why wouldn't we? And so if you're asking somebody to relocate from India to come here, they look at it and think, this eats up all my margins. By the time I'm done paying these people, I'm done. The quid pro quo was, yes, we will prevail on DBS to find among its clients the most financially, operationally, and strategically resilient to come to Botswana in the knowledge that they have the wherewithal to weather this storm of an otherwise not commercially conducive environment. That's how we got here. The other sweetener was that because there is, regardless of the current lull, significantly more demand for rough diamonds than there is supply. Not surprising. For every diamond, the kimberlite that holds diamonds in the entire globe, only 2% have enough to produce a mine. The idea that in God's country, in a space of 10 years, DBS was able to discover 5, God alone knows how that is possible. And if you think that's a small matter, where is Chris? He's here. Chris, the former financial controller at DBS Botswana, will tell you that between 1969 and 2008, DBS had spent $923 million US searching. They had found 0. So when your government says to you, we want to set up a mining exploration company, I hope you have the cash. And so this deficit between demand and supply meant that when the government of Botswana said to 10 cutting and polishing factories, if you come to Botswana, we will add to what you received from DBS. Nobody could say no, and so they came. But in coming, they had to train people, literally fly them to Thailand, because we didn't have any of our people. It was, from a cost perspective, not at all competitive. But that was one of the achievements from Remhai. The other is, of course, aggregation. Aggregation, as the word implies, is just taking diamonds from different mines, mixing them together, such that you sell them as a puzzle. The logic is simple. If you sell them one by one, the buyers will take the best stones first. You will be left with the poor ones, and then they'll say, oh, well, Joe, I'll just give you a penny for this. Yeah. But if you put them together, not only do you force that the run of mine is sold pretty much completely, but you avoid the race to the bottom from a price perspective, and the revenue flow is higher. This is what aggregates. So DBS brings diamonds from Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, Canada, and sorts them. So one of the agreements was that, no, we are now the center of the mining universe. Bring that stuff here. Come and sort in Botswana. It was this that brought aggregation. But to achieve this, Remohai, knowing as he did that it wasn't really up to DBS to bring South Africa's diamonds here, it was up to South Africa to agree. Because South Africa had the same, if you wish, national interest in saying, yes, we would like them to stay here. And so Remohai engaged his counterparts, both in Namibia and in South Africa, to say, folks, can we agree as SADC that being partners with DBS, that we negotiate with DBS to move aggregation to Botswana, given that our volumes are significantly higher than any one of you, and then we can see how we share in the benefits. It was this that made it possible. It was not a function simply of Botswana negotiating with DBS, because without the other countries agreeing, and if they took the same view, again, it would have been a case of the race to the bottom. I want to finish with something which is, shall we say, a little less straightforward. And in effect, it's an assortment of things that I think, nevertheless, speak to Remohai's success. With the help of Ren Chindo, and in his capacity as Chancellor of the University of Botswana, Remohai motivated funding by Botswana and the Oppenheimer families to create in the Okavango Delta, just outside of Maun, a center that at the time was called the Harry Oppenheimer Okavango Research Center. If you want to see excellence in research and education, visit that site. Unbelievable. The men and women of this country and their counterparts from anywhere in the world doing research in ecology, in aquatic animals, the interface between wildlife and humans, climate change. I think it's a great pity they are that far. But it is the ecosystem they need, because that is what they are studying. But what they do is groundbreaking. The center is now called the University of Botswana Okavango and Research Center, but it is quite simply impressive. That was Remo Khai's legacy. Remo Khai also, during the journey and immediately thereafter of 2006, was the first time during his tenure that a piece of technology, but not just any technology, groundbreaking diamond technology, such that from the moment the rock is blasted, put into a conveyor belt, taken into a processing room, crushed until the last stone left standing is the hardest substance known to man, which is the diamond. Nobody touches those stones. And they get flown to DDC in sealed canisters. This technology exists only in your country. Designed, implemented, and maintained by men and women from Botswana and DBS. This technology is also proprietary to Botswana, jointly owned by both the government of Botswana and DBS. Think if we had many more companies like that. Think if we operated like that with every company, that every IP, system-based or technology-based or whatever-based, was captured and documented and then used and then owned. What kind of country we would be if we replicated that? One of the tragedies of this achievement is that they remain in isolation. They stay within the diamond industry. The question really is why? Why are we not finding ways for them to back up into the entire economy? Remo Khai was what I call an institutionalist. He was a bureaucrat to boot. He was a great believer in systems, but it wasn't for the sake of systems. Remo Khai understood the value of institutional memory, that you can't run a country such that every time there's a new president, you acquire a new country. My God, how are we going to manage? He understood that institutions are run based on policies that transcend leadership, that transcend opinion. He was a great believer in the separation of powers between the presidency, the legislature, and the judiciary. He was so respectful of these principles that I can tell you, in the entire 4 years of negotiating the renewal of the journal lease from 2002 to 2006, not once we at DBS ever had a one-on-one with the president. It was unheard of. We dealt with his men because we knew when they spoke for the cabinet, and because he had given them the mandate. And we respect that. And we had an unwritten agreement that if we differed, we went to him together. Because then he would take a paternalistic view as a parent and say, of course, Sheila, they are right. What are you thinking? Or no, she's right. He was that kind of person. He empowered the technocrats. He respected that they knew, and that it was his duty to make sure that they, like him, if they became president in the future, would have that knowledge. So let me be as clear as I can. And I don't know in his eyes, whose eyes to look now, but I'll look somewhere anyway. If we are now negotiating for the acquisition of stock in the BS. And the men who were negotiating with Mogae are not in the room. Something is wrong. I'll just say it. Yeah, something is fundamentally wrong, that we can educate people, train them, acquire experience, and just ignore them. Why would we do that? Why would we do that, I ask you? Now, Mogae understood. You don't do so. Mogae understood this so well that when once he went to Germany and said to Peter Eigen at the EITI, yes, we will join the EITI, came back here, Redombali said to him, no, sir, we are not. He called and said, Peter, I was wrong. The technical said no. Peter said, Peter, what kind of country are you? You know, I thought you were the president. He said, yes, I'm the president of the country, but not the president of everything. The matter ended. He was that kind of person. And when you think then about the importance of the law and the sanctity of the law, not in what it says, but the spirit of what it stands for, you feel sorry. Mogae is not in the room. Here's the last example. The last thing that the previous administration did was to pass a law, or rather to amend the Mines and Minerals Act, such that the clause that says whenever a company is given a mining license, the people of this country will have a 15% share. That provision was changed such that the share would grow from 15 to 25. Except that law was also changed to say, actually, having now increased the portion, we, at our discretion, without any explanation, without any expectation, can just give it up and give it to any citizen. Put another way, your generation, sweetheart, some little sucker who happens to just be lucky will own the shares in Debson and not the citizens. You want to let that sink. Why would we do that? Why would we change a law that worked for all of us such that it works only for a few? Now, I was born and raised here, so I ask that question as a citizen because it troubles me that we would regress where the chiefs were benevolent enough to say, yes, we will render. Why would we find it sensible to take that which the chiefs rendered to all of us and render them to a few tenderpreneurs who just happen to be chosen God knows how? It is this sort of thing, folks, that makes Mogae's regard for rule of law and institutional sanctity, that makes him someone worth celebrating. Because I have no doubt on Mogae's watch, this would not happen. So there you are. If I have praised Mogae, I wanted to praise him. So there we are. Let me say one last thing. I did say I didn't know Mogae very well, but I understood that he was thick-skinned. You couldn't offend him. He was an intellectual. He liked to be challenged. And so you couldn't offend him whatever question you asked. This notion of us acquiring more shares in DBS is not new. It was muted in post-2006. And I observed that Mogae wasn't warming up to it, so I gathered enough gumption to say, what gives? Why are you not warming up? Mogae looked me straight in the face and said, you don't get it, do you, Sheila? DBS didn't come to our country in 1955 because they liked us. They came here because they were looking to protect their market footprint. They invested in searching for diamonds, in marketing them, in researching them, in treating them, in sorting them for themselves. You want them to have a large enough skin in the game, they continue to do so. You take that stock, you will disincentivize them, they will have no skin in the game. Then he said, what will you do with DBS? Thank you very much for your time. what do I do now? Sit down?
Good. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Can we give another round of applause, please? Hey, absolutely. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where I hand over to our official Master of Ceremonies, who will take over, and then she will facilitate the Q&A, and then from there we will also go ready for our closing. I know there's tons of questions. We may not get to all of them, but I will allow Kathy Malejani to manage that process as she has done so eloquently and so professionally many times before. Let's give her a round of applause, please. Thank you. Kathy, over to you.
Thank you very much. All right, we are going to give this Q&A about 20 minutes because we believe you have many questions. So I would like to see our roving mic. I don't see it. Where is it? No, I think we should have another one. Okay, let's see if you can speak out loud enough. Let's start there. Do we have any questions? Okay, I see one at the front.
Hi, my name is Khorata. Thank you for the engaging presentation. So my question is, from what I know is that like the Gen Z market in the US, like there's this revival of ethical issues about diamonds. They don't want to buy mined diamonds because of issues about blood diamonds and human rights violations, and they now prefer lab-grown diamonds. So I'm just trying to understand what drives consumer confidence and what do you think could be behind this revival, given all the effort of Mogae and De Beers to market Botswana as an ethical producer of diamonds. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll take 3 questions and then we'll get her to answer the 3. We have a second one.
Thank you, Dumelang. I saw that in the presentation there was an issue mentioning the CKGR issue. So I'd love you to comment on that, especially in regard to confirm if it's true that De Beers sold some mine to another company due to the CKGR issue, if it's true. And then the other thing is just a simple question to ask from your experience and the presentation that you gave. Do diamonds have any future, especially in regard to the synthetic diamonds, like the natural diamonds in Botswana or any other country? What is the future of diamonds? Thank you.
I'm going to ask that we please stick to 1 question per person. This is now 3 questions, but let's take 1 more person and make it 3 people. But one question per person. I see, okay, we have another question.
Thank you. Name is Petronella Matumo. My question really is, what could Mogae, what could he have done better? We've heard the glowing, but what could he have done better? Thank you.
Okay, I think you can answer those 3. Well, 4.
Yeah. Right. I hope this is it steady? Okay, thank you very much. Let me start with Petronella's question because I think it speaks more directly to where I landed. Yeah, this is the problem when you compliment the person. It may come across as saying that they are perfect. So let me just disabuse you of that presumption. But what could he have done? When I think about it, I think of a couple of things. The first one has to do with your question on the CKGR. So about 30% plus of Botswana's landmass comprises reserves and parks. What does this tell you? That in effect, unless we have a law that spells out exactly what our position is with whether we mine in parks? And if we mine, how do we mitigate the risk of a fallout with conservationists? Unless we have a law like that, we're playing with fire. Mogae should have addressed this matter, especially because he was at the cold front of the CKGR controversy. In my humble opinion, Mogae stopped short of the finish line, because the consequential effect of not doing that is that we will face another CKGR. It may be called something else, but essentially it'll be the same. So that is the first. And the second thing that I think Mogae could have done is that in a world in which we preach transparency, personally it troubles me that we elect MPs, they go to parliament, but they're not privy to these agreements. Why not? The law should have been changed such that our MPs, whether they are in the ruling party or not, as representative of people minimally, see the agreements. I have seen them, and I have seen nothing which, if they saw, they would know already what they know, if you see what I mean. And so by not placing this agreement in the public domain, we present the false image there is something there more than what I'm saying. Folks, there's nothing more than what I'm saying. And I'd like to think you have had nothing I've said that is detrimental to the country, the BS, or for that matter, to the diamond industry. The result of which is that when I was at DBS, every quarter, for 5 years, I was in a room like this with journalists, just briefing them, because I felt it was important they knew. I did the same with civil society. I did the same with the tenderpreneurs. Of course, they wanted business, and I had nothing to give. But I'm a great believer that to the extent that minerals are a national asset, to the extent that we, not the government of Botswana, are partners with the BS. The BS is not in partnership with the government of Botswana. The BS is in partnership with the people of this country. Every one of us, the BS are engaged in the government as our agent. How can what I know about myself hurt me? So that was, I think, one of the things that Mogae could have done. But no doubt he was busy doing other things. And no doubt, like his own contribution to what his predecessors did, he left it to others. So now it's up to you to go into politics and change that which he didn't change. Synthetic. So, two things. It's important to remember that consumption and performance of any market, of any category, of any item, is not constant. It is affected by all sorts of factors, and it has a tendency to go up and down. Now, there are certain impacts which, when experienced by a market, can have, one, a lasting or a permanent impact. What we are seeing is the impact of synthetics. You can say to some degree that in effect it will be somewhat permanent as a competitor to naturals. What I can't say is the extent to which it might in time outweigh demands. But I want you all here, including you, Jency, I want you to go home and say to your honey, I've got 2 stones in my pocket. One is real, one is fake. You tell me what they're taking. My genuine sense is that there will be a market that will walk away. That is why it is so important we do everything in our power to maintain the confidence in the industry. Because the weakness of the industry is not synthetics. The weakness of this industry is this audit report that says we made money from diamonds and just stole it. How are you going to go into the world and ask them to buy more diamonds when they say, but why? Your own government, your own report says this. Honey, that is our problem. We've got to fix this first because it strengthens us when we go out. At the moment, it weakens us. Mogae didn't have to deal with that. And therefore, he could successfully make it on. So no, the enemy is from within. Now, you asked two questions. You tell me which one I answer, because I won't answer two, because other people got to have a share. What do you want me to say about CKG?
No, I wanted your comment about the actions, but I think you answered it. Also, just whether it's true that DBS sold some mining rights or whatever.
Yeah, it is true. It was called Hope, and it was a deposit that had been discovered by a Canadian company called Falcon Bridge. The CKGR in geological terms is covered by a lot of sand. And the rocks that contain mineral, including, tends to be under this. I think Janine was estimated as far as 60 meters before you got to the rock that has the stones. The result of which is that you have to move all the sand before you get there. That's a lot of cost. As it happens, the kimberlite was the rock that contains the diamonds was also very small and very poor quality. And so both Falcon Bridge and DBS walked away and sold it to somebody who thought they could make it work. They too ran into the same problem. To be absolutely clear, it's not the first time. DBS also sold AK6, which is now known as Lucara. When Lucara goes to the offices with a stone, I want you to remember, that mine was discovered by DBS. We just walked away from it because you can't make a living as a company from one big stone every 6 months. You want a lot of stones every day. So the economics of it didn't add up. But of course it's sexy when we do discover large stones, and we are all very pleased.
Okay, few more hands. I see one at the back. I see one here.
Good evening once more. My name is Pagang Alfred, and thank you for your delivery. My question goes like this. Kindly, within the stretch of your imagination, can you just model a Botswana without diamond, given your exposure? Just a picture.
Good evening. My name is Silas Twadreyezo from Divine Nexus. It's just a follow-up from the natural diamonds and the lab-grown. Are we going into the trend of marketing diamonds as the collectibles or wearable items due to the market trend? Thank you.
Can we? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Mitsepikot Sansiametso from Zoe Diamonds. The first ever citizen-owned company that is female-founded, number one. My question is, what should we become before the industry forces us to become it? Basically because I think we woke up to the wave of provenance and traceability, which has now become an industry standard. So what is it that we should become as a nation that produces, diamonds of the best quality before the industry forces us to become it? Because now there is that, as Petronella said, competition between lab growns and diamonds, and we're actually feeling the heat of it. Thank you.
Let's do one last question, and then we'll allow our Mokgotsi to answer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll respect the protocol of one question, though I have 100. I always have conversations with Sheila. Sheila, I like that answer. I may be the president, but I'm not the president of everything. Because I would like to ask Uri, in your conversations with Ramogai, I have been troubled by the fact that we did not negotiate for Botswana to have broader skills like in jewelry, in negotiating contracts, our lawyers are terribly ignorant of the content because they were never involved. And our people, basala hale about doing jewelry, something that De Beers and Remhaye could have negotiated with De Beers, let's skill Botswana so that they can operate along the value chain. The prospecting, it's too expensive. But surely the jewelry making and the law making and negotiations, Botswana should be very skilled now at negotiating the minerals.
You know, the advantage of being having one foot in the grave is that you can say what you like. So I'm going to say what I like. I'm not going to answer the questions where I'm asked to speculate, because anybody can speculate. And what does it matter? Speculating is nothing. Let me help you with what I know. Because the question you asked, imagine a Botswana, you can put to anybody, and I'm not sure it's helpful. So with due respect, I'm not going to answer you. But I'm going to answer her question, because in my humble opinion, it's one that many Botswana think about. And many Botswana who speak to me speak about this issue. And so I think not only does it sit at the heart of the conversation today, but I think it is of interest to many. So you ask several questions in one. And so I'm going to try and bucket them, all the while arriving at some kind of meaningful response. So your assumption is this, that because we produce diamonds as a raw material, that by definition, we must be involved in the entire value chain. The truth is you're wrong. The economics of minerals are not about the country from whose ground they came. The economics of minerals are about the entity in the value chain most able to optimally extract value here and now. The entity in the cutting and polishing stage most capable of extracting value, not for itself, but for the entire value chain, is India. Because in India, they have a long history of cutting and polishing, not just diamonds, but other gems. For better or for worse, there's nearly 2 billion of them. They say for every 25 you dismiss in a factory, you have 50 better qualified. How are you going to compete? Now, why does it matter that India must be that efficient? Because we as Botswana, and Maitla will tell you, that we produce a lot of very teeny stones. These stones, if cut and polished at a high price, cannot be sold. We are able to sell that production from Botswana. We are able to fund the tailings dams because we have countries like India with a cheap enough labor for us to sell the diamonds. You want to see them as both competitors on one level, but also as a very important part of the value chain. So that's the big picture. Now, does that mean we can never achieve that? Of course not. Which is why your point that some thought must be given to how and where in that space we offer the greatest competitive advantage. Here you are absolutely correct. I am baffled that as a country wanted to cut and polish, we don't have schools producing people, either doing that or the supply chain of cutting and polishing. So there you have a point. You don't have a point at all, on the matter of jewelry. Let me explain. A friend of mine once asked me, Sheila, I don't get it with my wife. She's badgering me, saying we must go to Dubai to buy gold. I'm here in Ghana. We are called the Gold Coast because we are the center of gold. Why in God's name will I go to Dubai? I said, Joe, you're not getting it. Your wife is not going to buy gold. Your wife is going to indulge in lifestyle. Diamond jewelry is not about buying diamond. It's an indulgence in a particular lifestyle, which says I dress up. I get a driver to drive me. I had lunch at Saks on 5th Avenue. I stop at Tiffany. I buy diamonds. While I'm at it, I fly to London. The totality of this ecosystem, well, I'm glad you like that. So when we say to people, we want to cut and polish, we are not getting it because we are singling out a piece of jewelry, little realizing nobody's coming here unless we have huge five-star hotels, unless when they get to the airport, the roads, and unless people say, so I come to the Okavango Delta and do what after that? How many elephants can you watch? Yeah. And so the idea that just because we produce the raw material, we must participate at every stage is flawed. In effect, here is proof that the logic is flawed. One of the countries in the world that is the center for mineral processing, albeit metal substances, is Japan. Second only to China. They are a couple of islands. They haven't got mines to speak of. Do you know why? Because they focus on R&D, security of energy, affordable energy, and systems, and then manufacturing, proximity to manufacturing, R&D, material designers, and therefore they have this ecosystem that if you bring your iron ore to them, you don't have to then take the steel to across the world, adding more costs. That they are close to the customers who can specify with precision the type of steel, the level of resilience that the steel must have because it's going into that particular purpose. They can do the same with aluminum because it's going here. So in the absence of us having all this, I want to disabuse of all of us the idea we must go into diamond jewelry. As sure as day follows night, you will ruin the mining industry. And the mining industry is the hand that feeds you. You want to partner all through the value chain with those competent enough to keep driving demand and price. That's how it works. You don't, just because you grow tomatoes, doesn't mean you'll have a supermarket selling tomato juice. Think of it that way. I think that kind of...
I'm not sure if you're going to answer the one that was saying, should we be marketing diamonds as collectibles or wearables? And then there was another one that said, what should we be before the market makes us be that?
This last question is very important. One of the reasons why the BS has been so successful in marketing is forward-looking and looking at trends. One of the things that the company did in the 80s was, as Japan became affluent, they went to Japan. And in Japan, they were not consuming any diamonds at all at the time. By the 1980s, Japan was the second largest diamond consumer because they had perceived that this affluency of the Japanese, but they had also perceived one thing. It is that the Japanese culture is a very precise culture. When looked at that way, it translates into a level of quality and expectation that is unbelievable. If you buy a garment from the same brand, the same item in Japan and the United States or elsewhere, they're fundamentally different because the Japanese are precise and they drive demand not so much through quantity, but through value and high price. So if you are going to be ahead of the curve, you must do research. You must understand those sentiments as they evolve. You must understand where is the mindset of the people today, what is it going to be like tomorrow. In an ironic way, Lighthead, which is the company, the DBS company that produces lab-grown diamonds, was intended to be doing what you are saying. A good defense is a better offense was the purpose. That you produce them so cheaply, you will knock them out of the market. So it was never intended to be an alternative. It was meant to say, if you like these cheap ones, we'll give them to you. But we will produce them so inexpensively that we will sell them so cheaply. No one else will make money from it, but we'll keep the naturals, our core. And so the importance of understanding what is coming is the best I can do. Because to say to you, and you must do X and Y, would be to lie to you in pretending I know what is coming. All I know is that you better find out, and you're not going to find out until you do research, thorough research, paying a lot of money, and then influencing behavior. Because in marketing, that's what we call the push and the pull. Push them with advertising, pull with retail, be available, be in their face, but do research over and over and over again. Now, if as a country we are not researching, if we ourselves are not spending money researching for ourselves, it's not such a bad thing, because you know why? We have share in DBS. We have 2 people sitting on the board of DBS. They have been sitting on the board of DBS since 1987. Now, that's a lot of sitting. Now, these people should ideally know this. There's a problem. These men and women are civil servants. And so they go to London and they sit in a meeting for 4 hours. They come back to their regular job. It's a flaw. You need people who are embedded in diamonds every day, living it and breathing it. You don't want entrepreneurs. You also don't want parastatals. And I say this with the greatest respect. You want the hands off. You don't want to politicize diamonds. You just cannot do business through politics. And the tendency, increasingly, to find diamonds in the political space is the bane of our country. This I can say without a shadow of a doubt.
Let's take a few more questions. I believe you have one, Bashir.
Thank you very much for your talk. This has been a very engaging evening. I have a question for you around diversification, right, of the economy. I think that word first appeared in NDP 6. And it's been in every single NDP since then. And as you're talking about Mogae fighting for diamonds, fighting to market diamonds, fighting to increase the value of diamonds, what were the conversations around diversification? Why have we failed to diversify the economy? Some have said. And some have also said that maybe the industry just needs to collapse before we actually are forced to do something different because of the value that is in that industry. It's so high that it almost has lulled us into a complacency of looking for alternatives. So that's really my question. What were the discussions and how did they progress? And maybe why have we, as some say, not failed to actually diversify the economy? Thank you.
Okay, 2 more questions. I see a hand. Let me just...
Dumelang, ke bitswa Kgaone Tawana from Fraser McGill. Speaking to beneficiation, that's another word that it's almost everywhere now. We want to do beneficiation, but one would think of beneficiation as in, participating across the entire value chain. And I like the way you looked at it, as in we have to focus in areas that we are more competent. So I would want to understand what are your thoughts in terms of, what areas or how best can we maximize value within the diamond space before even diversifying to maybe other minerals?
One more question. I saw a hand somewhere at the back. Yeah.
Thank you. Kibidwa Stephen Tach. My question would be, there's a narrative, whether right or wrong, that as a country, we've been suffering from what some people call strategic modesty. Would you say that Mogae had inklings of that strategic modesty? And how, if it were there, has it affected the trajectory and the ecosystem around diamonds? Thank you.
Right. I should say, I didn't have a lot of conversations with Mogae, so let's just be clear. You know, I don't want to leave anybody with the impression we were buddies, on the contrary. And I don't think Ramsey ever saw me with a conversation, in part because when I went to Mogae, I made sure there was nobody in the office, because then I could speak to him freely. Otherwise, with the technocrats, they said, you can't say that, you can't say that. But seriously, was Mogae the modest type? I wouldn't think so. Not by any stretch of imagination. As a matter of fact, I remember Mogae saying that I am weary of people talking a lot about what we secured in 2006, because if every company coming to this country to search for minerals thought they would be lumped with this, they'd never come. Because this deal is so good, we want to keep it down. Because people will not understand that it is the peculiarities of this particular deposit. But even knowing that, he wasn't stopping, he was still asking for more. So no, Mogae himself did not suffer. But I think there might have been an unwarranted level of modesty in the first president that the ones that follows, because we were, after all, coming from humble beginnings. Yeah. And also we are a culture that is inherently modest. But I think our modesty is not the problem. Our lack of enterprise is the problem. And that was the conversation I had with Mogae. And by us, I mean you and I. I don't mean the government doing stuff for us. In our country, our idea of progress is that we must ask the government to do. Now, if you ask me what should change, that's what should change. I remember speaking with Mogae and saying, Mogae, you know, my sense is that we did very well. But I do think you and those who came before you erred in one respect. You educated us, you gave us health, but you never told us what we should contribute. And so we are a generation of people who look to government. My sense is that it is not the modesty, it is the failure to unleash the enterprise. When I travel elsewhere in the world, I see in Saudi, for instance, where I spend a lot of time, they too had a lot of wealth and still do from oil. But what I see there is the young people are entrepreneurial. They work hard. Nothing, absolutely nothing is taken for granted. If you were in Saudi and watched how the civil servants, the ministers, and everyone works, you wouldn't think they're the world's largest exporter of crude. You wouldn't think that they have the third largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. They manage their wealth as if it's running out. We manage our wealth as if it would never run out. Yeah. And this, in many ways, is true not just of our leaders, but of ourselves. As the CEO of De Beers, when I was engaging stakeholders, specifically my generation, the first thing they said is they wanted shares for themselves, and that I should go and talk to De Beers, that the geologists and the lawyers would get shares, and to hell with those in the village. I was mortified that was the generation that had been created, of people who haven't been educated so they could be the future Oppenheimers of tomorrow. They were asking. I knew then we were getting nowhere. That, to me, is the problem. It's not the modesty of our leaders, and certainly not the modesty of Mogae. What was the other question? Your question was diversification. Hell, that's a word. So there are different forms of diversification. There is diversification of the economy. And then there's diversification of an industry. There's just no getting away from it. Here and now, because of the very laws in which we, the people, own, and the role of government as not only the largest source of revenue, but also the largest spender, this is a problem in our country. Because you've got the government, which is the wealthiest entity in our country, getting tax from itself at Botswana, providing contracts through public tender and all these things. It's incestuous, this thing. If it were me, that's where I'd change, including that you slow down production of Botswana. I don't think it should collapse. That I won't buy. But nothing says we should produce 30 or 20 million cars. Somebody ought to just say, okay, folks, we're going to cut down. We're going to cut down on expenditure. We're going to cut down on production. And by the time I'm done, there will be another industry to bridge that gap. Who's coming with me? Are you sure we couldn't pull it off? If you ask me, I'd come. But you've got to be absolutely on the money. It has to be completely free of politics. It cannot be Joe, sons, and friends. It's just got to be a leader who's saying, I am going to fix this country. But we have become a country of politics. We have become a country in which politics are the business. God help us.
There was a question about how we maximize our value in the diamond space.
So this we thing, I mean, I use the word we, but let me be clear, this we thing troubles me. Because when people say we, I never say, no, which we? You mean like we, the people, or we, the government, or who is the we here?
Us as the people, the entrepreneurs, given the government, how do we maximize the commercialization by not playing within the entire value chain?
So let me see if I understand. What you're saying, are you saying that in your view, the only way to maximize is to be in the value chain? Is that what you're saying? And that if I advocate that we not necessarily do that, it creates a challenge in terms of maximizing value. Is that your point of departure?
No, what you were, it was a follow-up question from the gentleman you answered earlier by saying, by divorcing from maximizing profitabilization, moving away from the entire value chain. So I wanted to hear your thoughts in terms of where do you think we should play more within the diamond space, or how do we play more within the diamond space to maximize profitability?
Yeah, so don't play. That's the first thing. Don't play. No playing. Yeah, no playing at all. And this is important. And I don't say this humorously. I'm very clear, because this notion of let's play, you must define it. What in God's name does it mean? This is the real problem. We say we want to maximize value, but nobody defines what value looks like. Value is not automatic. Value is not inherent. Value is defined based on the needs of a country at the time. What we need now, the value of anything we do now, is twofold. One, recharge the Bula Fund for future generations. Two, employ the youth. Anything, say, that does not immediately address this is an non-starter. Because the value you create, which empowers a few niche people here, isn't value. It is this value that addresses our real problems that matters. So whenever I hear people say value, my first thing is say, okay, spell it for me. Write it down. Spell that value. What value are you looking for? The problem with saying we want to add value without doing two things. First, understanding the investment necessary. No value accrues without an investment. We must be clear what the investment is that we must make to generate that value. When you define that, you will be in a position in which you can compare the inputs versus the outputs. You will compare them in absolute value terms, but also in terms of their relevance to your need as a country at a time. Value changes. What was valuable in 1969, which is scholarships, is no longer the most valuable thing. The question is, when you project forward 30 years from now, what is the value you must be creating? You can't argue value, say, without doing that. This inherent feeling that we must get more, but we don't define what the more looks like and why the more matters. Look, I'm too old for that. Yeah. So my answer to your question is, first define the cost relative to the benefit, based on actual economic value, but also based on the challenge in your society. That if you do that, you will address. If you can't match what you do with what your society is calling for now and in future, you know you failed. Does that answer you?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to ask you for a huge round of applause for our Mokoti for this evening, Sheila Khama. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you can take your seat.
Okay.
And then at this point, I'd like to call our project manager, our programs manager from the Botswana Society. She goes by the name Me Bono Musi. And we forever expect her to, shed tears, blood, and sweat in order to put these events together. Please welcome her with a round of applause to the podium.
Because I'm really, really short, I always prefer to, very, very tall. Kathy says I'm very, very tall. So I always prefer to stand just beside the podium, because if I stand behind it, you're not going to see me. So my role is to give a vote of thanks. I've actually written something, and I would like to read, and I'm sure it's going to sound very awkward, because Khama stood here and spoke, not from reading, and she wasn't even looking at anything, and she spoke for a good 1 hour plus. So you are possibly wondering, but why would she be reading vote of thanks? Weird, right? Not so weird, because I don't want to forget anyone. Okay, technology agrees with you. I can't even find it. Let's forget about it. Okay, I would first like to thank Mayor Khama. Thank you so, so much. I think you've taken us through a journey of looking at history and looking at the legacy that Mogae left us, and we truly, truly appreciate that. Thank you so much for also pushing, because we at some point thought, no, man, we can't do this on the 13th. It's too cold. We might have to just postpone. And she was like, no, we're going ahead. So in fact, we proposed postponing on Monday, and she was like, no, it's not happening. We're going ahead. So thank you for twisting our arms, Prof and I. I don't think you know this, but when we left the meeting, we looked at each other and we said, did she not see the notice that it's going to be super cold? So thank you. Thank you so, so much. And I think I speak on behalf of everyone here. Hi, Gary, we might need a 2.0 of this, because I don't think they had enough. And we had agreed on 40 minutes, but we did an hour plus. That is a sign that we need to do this again. So we really have to do this again. And I will be thanking my board, because these are selfless individuals. And I know it's not so often where you hear an employee saying, may I request my board members to stand? I'll do that. May I please request my board members who are here to stand, so that when I appreciate them, you get to see them. I'm going to get fired, but I'm going to call you by names if you don't stand. Arenga Nunu, you are seated. Arakan. Yeah, TH. You cannot be seated. So these are individuals who've committed their time to making sure that the Botswana society continues to do the work that we do. I know that a lot of people, when they think board membership, they think board allowances. Well, they actually dip in their pockets. No allowances whatsoever, but they still give their 100%, and for that, we truly, truly appreciate. And then we would also like to thank Musets. So Musets are the guys behind the cameras. These guys have been with us since 2013, 14, around 2013, 14. And we don't pay them enough because we can't afford to pay them. But they still show up because they believe in what it is we're trying to achieve with the Botswana Society, with the Isong product. So guys, thank you so much. And then I'd also like to thank Monoculture. They are the guys, Badi, Basound. They've been with us for the longest time too. So I'm saying this because if by God's grace, we find a sponsor, and I keep engaging these guys, and it becomes an audit query, I'll tell them these guys were there when we had nothing. So we are still going to keep them. I'd also like to thank my team. And when I say my team, I'm sure a lot of you would wonder, hey, what are team I do? But I actually have a team. I've got volunteers who show up every time there's an event, every time there's something that needs to be done at TBS, these people show up. They show up and they make sure that things happen. So thank you so, so much, guys. And the National Museum, Makolobas, so I call the Deputy Director Makolobas. Thank you so much. I mean, we keep using this facility at absolutely no cost, and we truly, truly appreciate your support. Meaning anytime. Anytime you want to use it, even let's stop writing letters. Thank you so much. And lastly, the University of Botswana, where our offices are. And we've been with them for years too. Oh, Prof says I didn't recognize him. 5 years. Oh, he's saying 5 years. Hey, we've been with the University of Botswana for 5 years, and they've been in our corner. And I'd like to believe they'll continue being in our corner because to a great extent, we help them deliver their mandate too. I'd like to say for TBS to be where it is now, it's because we've been excelling on support from partners. So I would like to thank you for also considering becoming a partner from where you are sitting. We are a membership-driven organization, so I'm going to run a 2 minutes membership drive. So we invite members, individual members, corporate members. It's always so nice to have all of you come into our events when you are members. It would be super, super nice. So please do sign up for membership if you can. And also invite others to also sign up for membership. And thank you so, so much for listening. The reason why I had written something was because I sometimes speak and not want to stop. So that was going to give me like some sort of restriction. But unfortunately that did not happen. So thank you so much to everyone who braved the cold to attend. There'll be a glass or two of wine served outside. I know Bernard is very happy now. So thank you so, so much.
Okay, before we close off the session, let me just quickly say, Bono's already started, so I'm going to continue talking a little bit about how the Botswana Society is a membership-driven society organization. If you walk outside, on your right, there's a rantafole there, where we have books that are up for sale. Our very own honorable we call him Honorable Secretary at this point. He goes by the name Fred Morton. He's our secret weapon when we are knocking on doors and doing all sorts of things to make events and other such miracles happen on no budget. But he has a book that he's written. It's called Kettle's People. We have copies of that book. It is available for sale. And we were here just a few weeks ago speaking on a book called The Minds of Masiri. That book is also available for sale. So if you would like to get yourself a copy, please, there's a rantafole. The light is on, it is open. You can get yourself a copy. And if you haven't done so, please consider becoming a member of the Botswana Society, because we are really working on miracles and hallelujahs to pull off the Isong series. It would be really beautiful if we could actually pull on or pull out the events as we really would like to have them. But that said, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to the Botswana Society page on Facebook, you can like it and you will be able to see a copy or a stream of this video. And that said, my name is Kathy Malajani. It's been an absolute honor and a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you. And as Bona has already said, there is a glass or two of some refreshments outside. So please grab yourself a book. You can have a chat with Sheila if you haven't had enough.